Good evening, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, toddlers. Welcome to the launch of 25 Stories Allied to End World Hunger, convened by the Cornell Alliance for Science and co-hosted by the missions from Ghana, Indonesia, Kenya, and Uganda. My name is Nick Ishmael Perkins, and I am the director of SciDevNet, which is an online platform dedicated to science journalism for global development. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with you to celebrate what I think is a very pioneering and inspiring program. Now, before I continue, I have learned that there's something I need to take care of whenever I do a public speaking engagement, and this is the issue of my accent. And I say this with all seriousness. Some of you have heard this story before. I was given a talk somewhere, and there were a couple of people sitting in the front row looking at me very intently all through the talk. They came over to me at the end. I felt inspired because they'd obviously been watching very aptly. I said, "That was interesting, was it?" And this woman said, to be honest, I spent the entire time trying to figure out where you're from, and I don't remember a single thing that you said. And in fact, I thought, actually, I don't have to do it all the time, because maybe sometimes people understand. And a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking at this meeting for the Open Data Institute. And at the end, 3 people came over. And I thought, well, this must be important, because, normally it's 1 or 2 people at a time, but it was 3 people. And the guy who, in my head, I had elevated to the position of head of the delegation said to me, "Do you mind if we have a quick word with you?" And I said, "Yes, of course you can." He said, "Yeah, so the 3 of us had a bet about where you're from. So just to avoid that kind of thing, and so you can focus on the substance of the proceedings, I'm actually from Barbados, but I've lived in Canada and in Southern Africa for a while, and in the last 10 years in the UK. So now, enough about me. Actually, no, I want to talk about me just a little bit more. Because I want to explain actually why I agreed to come here tonight to MC the proceedings. And I mean, there are basically 2 reasons behind this. And the first is an issue of what I consider sort of moral urgency. By 2050, there are going to be 9.6 billion people in the world. And the Food and Agriculture Organization suggests that this means to avoid mass malnutrition, we'll need to increase world yields by about 70%. Now, to put that into perspective, we're talking about approximately 40 crop cycles to almost double the yields of global crops. Then you compound that with the idea that actually we have less land available for cultivation, and there's growing concern that the impact of mass malnutrition on national development outcomes has been not only underreported, but ill understood. And you begin to see something of the scale of the crisis that's presenting itself to us. And I think that this evening, we might be able to make some contribution towards dealing with this. And just at this point, it's probably worth me explaining a little bit about the Alliance for Science. I mean, I'm perhaps not the best person to do that, but certainly I'm going to abuse my privilege and describe it as I see it. And this is actually, the Cornell Alliance for Science is a global coalition of individuals and organizations who are committed to promoting science to increase choice and to secure food security, to prevent malnutrition in the face of escalating environmental challenges. And this is something that I can get behind. SciDevNet itself is not committed to any particular issue, but is very committed to the idea of promoting scientific evidence and technological innovation in the face of development policy and practice. And I like to think of the Global Alliance of Science as a coalition, as it were, that's also dedicated to the right to know around evidence, scientific evidence, and not necessarily dedicated to any particular single issue. And I know that a lot of people often think when they think of increasing agricultural yield of GMOs, and obviously that's an important area of the work that the Cornell Alliance for Science is involved in. But I also understood that they're actually not fanatical about this, and they recognize that the evidence varies according to context, and are very supportive of promoting the capacity at national level to make these decisions themselves. And I say this because actually I have spent some time with them. And also you can trust me, I'm a journalist. No, really, I am. And actually, but this idea of actually spending some time with them brings me to the second reason why I was very keen to come here today. The fellows who are at the heart of the Alliance program, and you'll hear a bit more about that, they are really the engine of the work behind that coalition. And they just spent 12 weeks at the Cornell campus, and I was privileged enough to go and spend some time with them at the beginning of September. And there were two things that struck me, actually, about the fellows. And the first was actually the diversity. And this is diversity not only across countries, we're talking about 10 different countries, but it's also diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of age, diversity in terms of religion, diversity in political orientation, even diversity in dietary preferences, as you will come to discover. And so that was really interesting and actually very engaging. But the second thing was that all of them had deeply compelling personal stories that were motivating them. And I had been told this before, and it was really interesting because I remember the first night I went out to dinner and it was all kind of, talking about agricultural policy and science policy, and it's like, yes, all very interesting. And then folks started to open up about why they were here and why they were doing what they were doing, and then it was really interesting, the kind of thing where actually you just kind of, your jaw just drops. And I think this is really important because this evening is really about how those 25 stories could drive the science and the policy that feed 9.5 billion people. And I'm going to actually ask you to join me in watching an introductory video to the fellows and their program.
My name is Joni Camilla.
I'm Father Noli Alparse.
My name is James Foley.
Fretwandre Masega.
I'm Marlo Assis from the Philippines.
My name is Vivian Chue.
I'm Jason Merkley.
My name is Abugu Modesta.
My name is Nasib Mugwanya.
When I was a student in college, I became an activist fighting a dictatorship. I was with farmers and laborers, and they were so poor. So I kept on thinking, how could I help these people?
It's really very painful when you see families that cannot afford to feed themselves at least 3 times a day.
It's ironic that the farmers, the very people who till the soil to produce food, are the same people who experience hunger.
We're not just talking about American consumers here that have plenty to eat. We're talking about people in food insecure regions who have nothing to eat but a small handful of rice every day.
My story is Jemima's story. She's one of those smallholder cassava farmers. Cassava, a major food security crop, is under threat by 2 major viruses. This is very devastating.
All the trees were being chopped down because all the papayas had virus in it. It's heartbreaking for him. And he said, I was so scared, Joan. I was so scared that we lose everything.
Traditional ways of farming in my country are not enough to be able to feed the many. And I think the science and the technology that is happening in our midst could be a solution to that.
Indeed, biotechnology can be of help to solving some of these problems. And therefore, if this technology is adopted by the farmers, I think it can help them greatly.
And it's my firm conviction that it's a fundamental right for farmers to have access to various farming options.
It seems very cruel to deny that technology to those people who are in such desperate need.
Access to biotechnology is really a social justice issue.
Being a part of the first batch of cohorts of the Cornell Alliance for Science is truly a very rewarding experience for me.
This is a completely unique program.
As they say here in America, awesome.
There was really a science to communication, and I knew that I needed to learn that. So when I found out about this program and that opportunity to learn more about how to communicate science, I couldn't do anything but jump at the opportunity.
And there was a completely new approach. They have what they call grassroots approach.
I got interested in this program because it was an avenue for me to improve on my communication skills in the area of agricultural biotechnology.
My participation in this is hopefully to empower me to speak up and get others to speak up in support of this.
Interacting with experts, agronomists, scientists, farmers, policymakers, journalists.
Commitment and dedication can actually help someone to get further and prove a point.
And there's such a rich exchange of knowledge and wisdom and the friendship. We're becoming like brothers and sisters and like family.
I am an ally for science because I strongly believe that science can be a key in solving hunger, malnutrition, and poverty. I cannot do it alone. I cannot succeed on my own, all by myself. That's why I realize the need to unite, the need to engage, and the need to empower a network of partners. Right now, I really feel empowered. Right now, I am more confident in engaging the public in scientific undertakings.
Isn't fascination and discovery wonderful?
This is one of the best experiences that I will ever have in my entire life.
Awesome. So this evening has been made possible not just by the Cornell Alliance for Science, but also by the UN missions of a number of key countries at critical junctures in their own food policy development. And we are very privileged to have the presence of a number of senior representatives from these missions with us tonight. And I think that their presence here reflects the commitment of their countries to these issues of food security and the associated development outcomes. It also reflects actually a real capacity to grapple with the questions that are exercising a number of us. And I would like to invite them to share with us their reflections on how the Alliance program and its objectives resonate with their context. And I'll begin by introducing the Deputy Ambassador of the Permanent Mission of Ghana to the United Nations, Mr. Philbert Johnson.
I must begin by apologizing. I do not have the musical flair of articulating thoughts as Nick, but I'll do it my way. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking Cornell Alliance for Science for the opportunity to share this platform with the eminent ambassadors of Indonesia, Kenya, and Uganda on a topic of relevance for human development and well-being. Science, technology, and innovation have considerable relevance to almost all the sustainable development goals. Consequently, any activity that offers skills and expertise for safe, effective, and practical application of science, technology, and innovation towards the attainment of the 2015 Development Agenda, especially where it's most needed, deserves our full attention. May I therefore acknowledge the work of Cornell Alliance for Science for its partnership in this area, as well as the efforts of students from Cornell University in Education in General in Ghana. The efforts deployed for the successful Global Leadership Fellows Program, mainly for trainees from developing countries, including Ghana, is commendable. It is my fervent hope that the fellows would act as agents of change in contributing to the development, transfer, transmission, and application of evidence-based and environmentally friendly technologies to guarantee food security and nutrition in their communities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in spite of global advancement in agricultural science and technology, it is reported that about 795 million people suffer from chronic hunger, with 98% out of that number in developing countries. In Africa alone, it is estimated that more than 200 million, about 23% of the continent's population of 1.1 million, suffer from chronic hunger. Even though these figures seem to be declining, the evidence suggests that hunger levels continue to rise. This situation poses grave danger to health and well-being of African population, especially children, as they are particularly susceptible to cognitive development challenges and non-communicable diseases. That about 75% of the continent's population are employed in the agricultural sector and yet cannot cater for the feeding and nutrition needs of its people project a gloomy image and calls for action to address the situation. Climate change and its impact on agriculture, drought, high incidence of pests, and poor yields are drawing attention to biotech solutions for agriculture. Nevertheless, the baseline for such solutions should rest on ethics, safety, and empirical data adaptable to our environmental conditions. Agriculture, forestry, and fisheries remain fundamental sectors for Africa's economies, and yet African countries have not been able to maximize gains thereof, being buffeted not only from high tariffs on value-added agricultural products, but also non-tariff barriers in the form of phytosanitary regulations and technical barriers. It is the conviction that biotech solutions could address these challenges, including Africa's supply-side constraints, and enhance the continent's share of global trade together with the right policy options. With a burgeoning young population and dwindling farmlands, Africa needs comprehensive and concerted action to derive maximum benefits from biotechnology. Such solutions must be Africa-driven, reliant on empirical reality and indigenous factor input. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, agriculture plays a key role in Ghana's economy. However, the sector has remained subsistence-based with undeveloped technology to produce 80% of total output. In spite of this situation, it holds prospects for generating income and providing subsistence for majority of people. Consequently, our main focus of agricultural development policy is to accelerate the modernization of agriculture and ensure its linkage with industry through the application of science, technology, and innovation. It is expected that the approach will transform the economy through job creation, increased export earnings, food security, and supply of raw materials for value addition and rural development, as well as significant reduction in the incidence of poverty. Undoubtedly, this has to be complemented by an effective natural resource management and an environmental governance regime. To ensure biosafety, Ghana passed a biosafety law in 2011 to guarantee adequate level of protection in the field of safe development, transfer, handling, and use of genetically modified organisms resulting from biotechnology that may have adverse effects on health and the environment. The law also established transparent and predictable processes to review and make decisions on genetically modified organisms. In closing, I wish to congratulate Cornell Alliance for Science on their first anniversary and to encourage us all to think and act in the best ways to develop agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, whilst taking the best care of our environment for our common well-being. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Ambassador. It's now my pleasure to invite the Ambassador of the Permanent Mission to the United Nations of Indonesia, His Excellency Ambassador Desra Pruchia.
Thank you very much, Nick. I am not a native speaker. My country has never been colonized like yours. That's why I'm going to torture you with my English. Not only that, I'm also now suffering a bit of cold, so bear with me. But do not worry, please focus on the substance that I'm going to say. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the Council University Alliance for Science that has invited us to co-host this event along with the Permanent Mission of Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda. It's an honor for me, and to be honest, I feel very old now, Nick. I would also like to congratulate the 25 fellows. One of them is Indonesian, of the first Global Leadership Fellows program at Cornell University for finishing 12-week intensive training course. We hope that the training will equip you with the skills and knowledge to lead advocacy efforts in each of your community for increased access to agricultural biotechnology. I feel that there couldn't be a better place than the United Nations to launch a global conversation that aims to promote access to scientific innovation for food security. But be careful in the UN, very often they talk too much, but when it comes to implementation, they are somewhat lag behind. This is what we need to learn also from the UN. Do not forget implementation in the field is very important. Global leaders, I could also share with you that last September, global leaders have launched what I would say a transformational agenda called the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And the agenda gives all countries of the UN a 15-year window to meet 17 goals and 169 targets with an overarching objective of eradicating poverty. There are also other dimensions of science and technology that we could explore more on this Sustainable Development Goals or 2030 Development Agenda. Let me also add that increasing agriculture yields while grappling with climate change is an issue that we here at the United Nations have been focusing more and more, which of course needs scientific solutions. Another technology innovation to explore is ways to provide more reliable and effective data through information and communication technology that could help in providing real-time information in a transparent manner for the production and distribution side as well as for the consumers around the world. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development calls on us, I would underline, under Goal 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals to, I quote, end hunger, achieve food security, and improved nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Answering the call of the 2030 Agenda to end hunger while meeting the overarching priority to eliminate poverty will certainly require boosting agricultural productivity. Science and technology plays a key role in enabling this objective to be met. We need to develop appropriate and affordable technologies that increase agricultural production and capacity, leading to heightened exports of agricultural products, particularly within the smallholder farmers and fishers. Not only making good food and food available, we also have to work in enabling access that is reliable and consistent to good nutrition. It also means that people are healthy because they are consuming quality food sufficiently. When more people are able to meet these objectives, we know that we are one step closer to winning the fight against poverty. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that we will be hearing more stories tonight by the fellows of the Cornell Alliance for Science. I look forward to hearing them. Let me end by saying how delightful it is to know that there are scientists around the world thinking and wanting to make a difference. Science has always been the bridge and avenues for change and transformation. I encourage you to be part of realizing the 17 goals and 169 targets of the 2030 Agenda for Development. There is much optimism that these goals and targets can be met because of the scientific age we live in. With your ideas and hard work, realizing the basic right to food and being well nourished is within our reach. I believe we can do it, and we can do it together through partnership. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I don't think there's any reason for you to apologize at all. I think that your remarks were clear, wise, and the call to action at the heart of them was very delicately expressed. Okay, and now we move on to the UN Ambassador at Large for Kenya and an Olympic gold medal winner. Yes, I thought that might get a hush. Peter Rono.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, as you've been told, my name is Mr. Peter Rono, Goodwill Ambassador to the UN. It's very interesting that tonight's function happens to be affiliated to what I was appointed for as a Goodwill Ambassador to malnutrition. So it's my great honor, like you can say. I was coming here to cheer one of the trainees here, Vivian, who happens to come from my village. And so when I came here, I was asked to say something. But it's a great honor for me. I want to thank Cornell University for the great initiative. And also, I would like to thank the United Nations for hosting us. And obviously, I would like to thank this great nation and the people of this great nation for hosting us. For the trainees that have been trained, I would probably urge that you get to the villages where the people are and be able to help them so that they can make a difference in terms of the hunger that has affected or has touched the world, because science has always been the best thing and has given us the best answers. So I will leave science to the scientists, but encourage all of us to be able to find a way of talking to the government and policymakers to see that as the population continue to increase and food becomes a problem, there is need for all of us as the world, as people, to use the ideas that we learn or science give us so that we can be able to make a difference and be able to free everybody to have something or a meal to eat. Lastly, I happen to come from Kenya. I would probably just tell you that Kenya produces some of the finest people, and over the years, the president of this country, the roots actually goes all the way to Kenya. And I remember also going back, the Prince of England, when he proposed, he did it in Kenya. And I remember in the year 2000, when everybody was worried about the computers coming to an end, Bill Gates was in Kenya. So Kenya is a very special country. I would like to invite you to Kenya. It's a wonderful country. And a few weeks ago, I was here in New York City. And of course, you saw what Kenyans did here in New York City at the marathon. We were first in men and women. So Kenya is a great country, most resilient people. It's a wonderful, wonderful country. I've had an opportunity to travel to almost every country in the world. I will encourage all of us to coexist and work together, because this world is for all of us. Let's continue to do the best we can. I want to congratulate the 25 that gave their stories. You guys are very special. I will only encourage that you go to the villages and be able to train those people in the villages, because that is where the problem is. I thank you very much, and thank you for the honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, being a very effective ambassador as well. And now it's my honor to introduce the ambassador of the Permanent Mission of Uganda to the United Nations, His Excellency Ambassador Richard Nduhura.
Thank you very much, colleague, excellencies, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to be speaking after Kenya. Kenya produces wonderful people, and we happen to be very good neighbors. So we are actually the same. We also produce good people. I thank the Cornell Alliance for Science for inviting me to this event. I also wish to congratulate the 25 fellows upon completion of the first Global Leadership Fellows Program. Uganda is proud to have participated through 5 of our nationals. Uganda has embraced science, technology, and innovation as the cornerstone for economic growth and development. The country could have a competitive edge in developing a bio-resource economy given its natural resource potential. Agriculture has and is still playing a critical role in the economic development of Uganda. Therefore, investment in agricultural research with an objective of increasing and diversifying output is a rational strategy towards reduction of poverty and addressing food security challenges in the country. Biotechnology is an important tool whose application Uganda scientists are exploring in crop, fish, and livestock improvement, value addition, waste management, and in medicine. It became prominent in Uganda around the year 1993, when the Department of Animal Science in the Faculty of Agriculture at Makerere University proposed to test a transgenetically derived bovine somatotropin hormone for growth and milk production in Ugandan cattle. The hormone, which was to be imported, was produced through the genetic engineering of agrobacteria. At the time, the United States of America and the European Union were deeply engaged in debate over trade in genetically modified organisms. Later that year, in November 1993, the EU placed a moratorium on the sale of the hormone. In 1995, another proposal was made to conduct a phase 1 clinical trial of a candidate HIV-1 vaccine, which was later named RVAC VCP205. It was the first preventative HIV-1 vaccine study in Uganda and in Africa. The bovine somatotropin and the RVAC vaccine proposals made to Uganda National Council for Science and Technology to a large extent formed the basis for the formulation of a national biosafety guidelines, leading to the establishment of a national biosafety committee in 1996. Government approved a national biotechnology and a biosafety policy for Uganda in April 2008. The policy aims to ensure safe application of biotechnology in Uganda. The policy paves way for use of genetic engineering and related techniques in all fields of science and technology. The specific aims of the policy are to build and strengthen Uganda's biotechnology research and development capacity, promote use of biotechnology in production, provide a sound regulatory framework for bioengineered organisms, and promote the ethical and responsible use of biotechnology for national development purposes. A bill entitled the National Biotechnology and Biosafety Bill 2012 has already been introduced in the Parliament of Uganda. The bill aims at operationalizing the policy already alluded to. It provides for monitoring, supervision, and legal permission of genetically engineered crops for the prevention and control of serious crop diseases such as the banana bacterial wilt, cassava mosaic disease, and cassava brown streak disease. Research is ongoing on GM maize for drought resistance and BT maize for stem borer resistance. The Uganda government recognizes that agricultural biotechnology is a very important scientific tool for crop improvement. Only recently, while speaking at the World Food Day, and that was on October 16th this year, the President of Uganda publicly pledged his support for biotechnology and blamed the delay in passing the legislation on widespread ignorance, including that of the legislators. I am very optimistic that our 5 Ugandans that have benefited from the fellowship program at Cornell will immediately employ their skills to create awareness and diminish the ignorance and misconceptions about biotechnology. In conclusion, I wish to thank the Cornell Alliance for Science for building capacity of Ugandans to communicate science and for providing network opportunities to leverage advances in agricultural sciences to increase farm productivity. On behalf of the Uganda government and its people, I welcome this initiative and the official launch of the Uganda Alliance for Science. I look forward to further championing implementation of the initiative. I request Cornell Alliance for Science to continue working with Uganda in furthering this noble idea. I once again congratulate you and thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I have to share that with you, actually. His Excellency was just congratulating me on the pronunciation of his name. Well, I've spent some time in Uganda. I want to take a moment, actually, again to thank their Excellencies for taking the time to come this evening and to be part of the event. I know from my own line of work that you cannot take for granted actually, that national polity is always very supportive of scientific endeavor, because oftentimes it's seen as something which is quite divided from the reality of the villages or from the reality of economic growth. And I think it's a credit to the countries that you represent, actually, that you take so seriously in initiatives such as the Alliance, and that you take the time to come here and to share your reflections. So it's enormously appreciated. Now, I'd like to actually invite a representative from Cornell University, the Senior Associate Dean for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Professor Max Pfeffer, to come and share his own reflections on the work of Cornell University around the Alliance.
It's so nice to see all of you here tonight, and it's a great crowd, and we're so happy to be here with all of you. I bring you warm greetings from Dean Catherine Boer and the entire faculty of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University. My regards extend especially to the ambassadors who have joined us tonight. We appreciate your presence a great deal. Honored guests, thank you for coming tonight. And most of all, congratulations and thank you to the fellows who we honor tonight. Our vision at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is to lead with science and education to a resilient future. We want to apply science and education to dealing with the grand challenges of our times: climate change, food security, developing a sustainable source of energy, applying and harnessing the great breakthroughs in information technologies to improve the human condition. The Alliance for Science builds on a century of these efforts at Cornell University and builds on relationships that have been developed all over the globe to improve food systems. The Alliance for Science has this incredibly important mission of educating the public and policymakers about the potential of agricultural technologies to deal with the burgeoning populations that we have in the future and meeting the needs of those populations in the 21st century. Our college, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University, is dedicated to responsible science. By that I mean we take a systematic approach to evaluating new technologies. We take into account a multiple set of considerations. And we do that while also considering the ethical and social implications of those new technologies. Our university also has a deep and abiding respect for free inquiry and a respect for multiple points of view. And it's our responsibility to provide a forum for the most searching and candid discussions on public issues of grave importance to mankind. We consider ourselves to be a community of scholars that embrace diverse sets of viewpoints from multiple disciplines in a climate of inclusiveness and respect. And it's in that context that the Alliance for Science has such a very, very important voice, not only at Cornell University, but at the scientific community throughout the world. So it's with that I congratulate the fellows who we celebrate here tonight. I want to thank them for the work they've done until now. I want to thank them in advance for the great things they're going to do to meet the very important needs of the future. And I have no doubt that their efforts will be of great consequence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. About a year ago, I met a very impressive woman. I was at the conference for the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, and I met Sarah Davidson Uvanga, And it's interesting because actually the word was at the conference that she was both sharp as a tack and a good egg, which actually is an interesting hybrid if you think about it really hard. But in fact, both of these things proved to be very true. And Sarah is the director of the Cornell Alliance for Science, and she is both very, very intelligent, which is where the sharpness comes from, but also a woman of enormous integrity, which is why people call her a good egg. For those of you who might not be familiar with English metaphors, for instance, people who might not have been colonized by the English. And Sarah is actually, the woman who was behind the Cornell Alliance for Science program, and she's not only the director, she's also senior associate director for the Department of International Programs at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and she received her PhD in the field of plant biology, which makes her particularly well qualified actually to lead a program like the Alliance. For those of you who may be wondering about her accent, just so you can focus on the substance of what she has to say, she hails from a small agricultural village in northwest Illinois.
Thank you, Nick. It's so important for us that you're with us tonight. SciDevNet, and particularly you, are such an important ally to the Alliance, so thank you for that. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Cornell Alliance for Science, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening as we launch our global initiative in support of global access to science and to innovation. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to Your Excellencies from the permanent missions of Ghana, Indonesia, Kenya, and Uganda. Thank you for being here with us and for sponsoring us here at the United Nations. It's most fitting that we launch our initiative at the UN, an institution that promotes humanity and global cooperation. And given the tragic events of the last week, we who believe in global cooperation must stand strong and ally ourselves with positive change. I would also like to thank and welcome our Senior Associate Dean, Max Pfeffer. Thank you for being with us tonight, and I'd like to thank you and Dean Catherine Bohr and the administration of Cornell University for supporting the efforts of the Alliance for Science in its early days. I'd also like to acknowledge the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Triad Foundation, the entities that have funded our initiative. And if it weren't for their belief in the Alliance and our shared vision, we would not be here tonight. And of course, before we go any further, let me recognize and welcome the stars of this show, the 25 champions who comprise the inaugural cohort of Alliance for Science Global Leadership Program Fellows. Please, if you would, come forward so we can see you. Their determination and vision provides us the opportunity to come together this evening. I'd also like the members of the Cornell Alliance for Science staff and the Office of International Programs staff who have worked so tirelessly on behalf of the Alliance to stand and join the fellows, Jaron Porciello, Mark Linus, Hannah Smith-Walker, Jeremy Vaverka, Polly Holmberg, Chibo Shinagawa, Bob Hazen, Becca Harrison, Shaylee Shaw, Manuel Bevia-Perez, Ryan Lee, Linda McCandless, Joan Conroe, Callie Arthur, Anna Garber-Hammond, and Daniel Otunge. Daniel has been a thought partner of the Alliance since its conception and is a current visiting lecturer with the Alliance coming from Kenya. And I'd also like to extend my deepest appreciation for the hard work of our communications director, Atu Darko, who led the vision for this evening's event. Let's give them all a big hand. What a team. Tonight, we'll have the opportunity to share many stories about access, technology, and innovation. I grew up in a small agricultural village, as Nick alluded to, of 283 people in the northwest corner of Illinois. My poor, very hardworking, and smart parents instilled in me values prompting my desire for more education and a greater view of the world. As a 12-year-old, one of the goals I had my sights set on was simple, but fairly profound in terms of the access it provided. What I wanted was a library card. Our town had no library, and we could not afford the out-of-district costs of a library card in the nearest city half an hour away. However, my initial limitation to access did not keep me out of the library, which is a wonderful place for a penniless 12-year-old, even if I could not check out a single book. The height of my access was on those afternoons that my mother would drop me off at the library while she worked the early evening shift as a waitress at the nearby Pizza Hut. There, I would spend those spare few hours thumbing through the books at the Freeport Public Library, one of the first Carnegie libraries in Illinois. It was through my access to that library that I discovered an early interest in astronomy, that I thumbed through the issues of National Geographic, taking in the photographs that exposed me to the cultures and wonders of the world, and that I read about vagabonding in America. Those evenings inside the Freeport Public Library, my worldview was broadened. Like the access to information that the libraries provided me, my schoolmates who grew up on the farms that dotted our local landscape also benefited from access. Access to agricultural innovations that reduced drudgery, increased productivity, incomes, and ultimately increased their opportunities for education. Many of my schoolmates were the first in their families to attend college. Classmates like Chad Pals, who came to school each day after what had already been a long morning of chores on the farm. At our rural school, kids like Chad had new opportunities. Unlike his parents' generation and those prior, Chad went to college, and now he teaches math at the same school from which we graduated. Access to agricultural innovations on Chad's family farm helped ensure his opportunities to higher education. And that's a story that we hear from farming families all across the world. Decades later, the demographic in the Midwest has completely changed. Fewer people are directly engaged in agriculture, and those that are engaged are doing so with more sophisticated tools and more business savvy. They feed millions more people. They're part of a global market due to access to information and access to agricultural innovations. Today, I'm an active library user and card holder. I have a PhD in plant biology, and I'm the mother of 2, soon to be 3, beautiful, curious children. As a trained plant scientist and a mom, I feel strongly that we must use the tools of science to end the disparity that we see around the world. I'd like to work toward ensuring that every parent has the opportunity to put warm, nutritious food in front of their children 3 times a day, and that every mother can both feed her children and send them to school. Access to food and to education are 2 aspects of routine daily life that most of us here in the United States take for granted. Ensuring that access to all people is what drives me each day in my work in support of access and choice. Everyone in this room has stories to share about the importance of access. And it's these experiences that drive us toward our shared mission of promoting access to innovation as a means of promoting global food security, improving environmental sustainability, and raising the quality of life globally. These experiences initially flamed the fire in my belly to work across borders to create a global alliance for science that would unite us all in our quest to increase fair and equitable access to agricultural innovation and to be able to communicate those stories effectively. Tonight, we celebrate the official launch of the Alliance for Science. The highlight of this initiative is the Global Leadership Fellows Program. 25 inaugural fellows will depart from New York City tomorrow, having spent the past 12 weeks at Cornell University. Each of them is driven to communicate the mission of access to innovation by their own stories and their own experiences, and you'll hear about some of those later tonight. Tomorrow, we'll begin recruiting the next class of Global Leadership Program Fellows. These fellows are passionate champions committed to ensuring that modern innovations in agriculture do not bypass the people in their countries. As members of the Alliance, we believe that scientists should have access to all of the tools, including genetic engineering, that they need to innovate, and that farmers and consumers should be able to choose what they want to grow and what they want to eat. And this is true here in the global north, but even more critical in the food-fragile countries of the developing world. The 25 fellows who are here tonight to share their stories are the champions who will grow the Global Alliance for Science far beyond the Cornell campus where it began, from Oakland to Bali to Bangladesh, Delhi to Dar es Salaam, from Dhaka to Manila to Maui. The farmers in the county where I grew up greatly improved their livelihoods when offered new access to agricultural technologies. And we are seeing great successes on the other side of the planet as well. And let me give you one very recent example of what I've been talking about, where access to innovation has made a real difference. I want to share with you the story of Mansoor Sarkar. In 2014, he was one of only 20 farmers in Bangladesh to grow the first generation of genetically engineered pest-resistant eggplant, or brinjal as they call it, after its approval by the Bangladesh government in 2013. In 2014, in February, he planted a quarter-hectare field of genetically engineered Bt brinjal and was rewarded with an edible crop that he and his family could both eat and market as pesticide-free. When growing conventional eggplant, Sarkar routinely sprayed insecticides twice a week and sometimes as much as twice a day. Each spray costs about 1,500 taka, or about $19 US. And with roughly 40 sprays needed, this costs $760 over the course of a season. Yet 75% of Bangladeshis live on $730 per year, or less. Perhaps not surprisingly, Mansoor Sarkar says, quote, "This variety is more cost-effective and we do not have to use insecticides." Mansoor, his wife, and his 4 daughters eat eggplant 2 to 3 times a week. And the extra income from eggplant allows him to support his family and, importantly, send his girls to school. Mansoor Sarkar's neighbor's eggplant, a conventional non-Bt variety planted in the adjacent field, was riddled with pest damage and not fit for sale or for eating. Mansoor says he hopes that he can set an example for other farmers in his community so that they too can benefit from this technology. The stakes here are high. Eggplant is South Asia's first GMO food crop, developed by public sector scientists for distribution to resource-poor farmers. And yet, anti-GMO pressure groups hope to disrupt the adoption of Bt brinjal in Bangladesh and prevent its approval in other South Asian countries, particularly in India, where access to this technology could still be a long way off for farmers, and that's due to politics, not due to science. To me, this is a compelling example of how genetic engineering can improve access to a safe, nutritious food for some of the world's most vulnerable farmers. How can we oppose a technology here in the well-fed West that shows substantial benefits for the environment by reducing pesticide use, improves the health of farms and farming families through reduced pesticide application and accidental consumption, increases access to a healthy, nutritious crop, and increases farmer income, allowing farmers to diversify their diets, procure other amenities, access health care and medicine, and perhaps, most importantly, send their kids to school. This month, an additional 200 farmers in Bangladesh will have new access to this innovation as they will transplant Bt brinjal seedlings into their fields, joining the ranks of Mansoor Sarkar and his family. Mansoor Sarkar's story is one where one ag innovation and the political will of his country's agricultural leadership offered him the opportunity to greatly improve his family's livelihood and offer new opportunities for his daughters that may help to break their poverty cycle. This is the spirit of the Alliance for Science. Back home in their countries, these 25 champions before you who have come to speak to you tonight will continue to be confronted with the social injustices and environmental challenges that have shaped their stories and their passion for improving the lives of their people. But no longer are they 25 individual hunger fighters and environmental stewards. These champions are now part of a global family that is far stronger than the sum of its parts. Together, the fellows, the Alliance staff, the 970 people who have joined our Alliance, and the 5,200 more who have supported our efforts join us in sharing with the world on-the-ground stories that compel all of us to work together to ensure access to agricultural innovation to meet the grand food security and environmental challenges that we face today. Tonight, these champions and I appeal to all of you to join us in our mission to fight the injustices of the world with science, with access, sense, compassion, and cooperation. Thank you for joining us here at the United Nations tonight, for joining our global family and helping us launch our global initiative, the Alliance for Science. Thank you.
We're going to continue with the rest of this evening's program, which is a little more informal, but no less important. And now we get to hear from the stars of the show themselves. And these are the fellows. Some of you may have heard of an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Intuitively, that feels very true. But it does present us with a particular dilemma when it comes to resilient and sustainable agriculture, because we have far to go and we need to get there pretty quickly. So the idea of choosing one of these outcomes doesn't feel very feasible, tenable, or ethical. Thankfully, the Alliance get that. And so what they have done is they have very cleverly come up with the idea of getting somebody to help me keep time. So it's not just one of us, there are going to be two of us actually, who will be emceeing the second bit. And I am thrilled to introduce to you one of the particularly dynamic fellows in this year's program, Leah Moidadi. Although Leah is only 21 and of relatively petite stature, she has big dreams and hopes for her people of Indonesia. She's already very experienced in public communication and is very open about the strength of her commitment and beliefs about the role that science can play in feeding the most vulnerable populations. One of the things as well about Leah, as I have spent some time with her, is actually you're really struck also by the size of her ambition for what she would like to achieve. And I think it's, you know, the kind of thing that reflects what's great about the fellowship program is they've somehow managed to identify people internationally who have this level of commitment, the fire in their bellies, as Sarah has said before. And I think Leah is a great ambassador for that. She is also slightly nervous about her accent, but as you will have heard from her ambassador, I don't think that that will stop her from making an impression on you tonight. Leah Moidadi.
Thank you so much, Nick Perkins, for such a nice introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leah. I'm from Indonesia. I'm so excited to be here in front of all of you tonight, and I'm so proud. And it's an honor for me to introduce some of our fellows in the Alliance for Science who will share their personal stories. And so, why we're not started now? We will start with our first speaker, and our first speaker will be Reverend Father Emmanuel Alparse, or who we call Father Noli. Father Noli has been a Roman Catholic priest from the Philippines for 16 years. And also, he is a member of the National Committee of the National Committee of Philippines Departments of Agriculture Programs on Biotechnology. And Father Noli is also one of the greatest and kindest fellows in our fellowship. And so, please welcome Father Noli.
Terima kasih, Leah. Thank you very much. The glory of God is man fully alive. I'll say that again. The glory of God is man fully alive. That was a statement attributed to Saint Irenaeus, I think in the 2nd century. And the moment I heard that, I believed it. How do we, human beings, glorify our Creator? The only way we can do it is to be able to praise God in our best situations. Good evening, Your Excellencies. With all due respect, without meaning any disrespect, can I just say, my dear brothers and sisters, you know, when I say Your Excellencies, I feel like I'm in front of my bishop and I get nervous. My dear brothers and sisters, what is a priest doing here? You know, when I applied for my J1 visa, it's an exchange visitor visa to the United States, the consul looked at me seriously and asked, a priest studying genetic engineering? And I thought I wouldn't get my visa. He was just surprised, a priest studying genetic engineering. And why not? You know, something like 13 years ago, I'd been a priest for 16 years. My bishop, he's now retired, called me to his office one day and told me, Father Noli, I received a letter inviting me to attend a conference on genetic engineering. During the time, I was a director of the Social Action Center. I think in the United States, it's the equivalent of the Catholic Social Services. And I was taking care of all the human, ordinary problems of the people. Women empowerment, poverty, hunger, sustainable agriculture. And my bishop said, if this technology that was just being introduced to the world during that time, 13 years ago, Noli, if this technology is going to deliver on its promise to increase the harvest of farmers and increase their yields, the church has to get involved with it. And that was how I started with my affair with biotechnology. My dear brothers and sisters, my being here tonight is not about really my being an expert in science. I'm not a scientist. I studied philosophy, I studied theology. I'm coming from a standpoint of ethics and morals. I've been saying my country is the 3rd largest Catholic nation on earth. The largest Catholic nation on earth is Brazil. The 2nd is Mexico. The 3rd is the Philippines. The 4th is the United States. And millions of my people are hungry. One time I talked to a laundry woman. It was a Sunday, and she was washing the clothes. And I said, aren't you going to church? Aren't you going to attend Mass? And she told me, Father, I'd like to, but if I stop washing clothes, we won't earn the money to feed my children. And she received something like 250 to 300 pesos a day. That's equivalent to about $1 or $1.25 in your country. It's not because she doesn't love God. It's not because she doesn't recognize there is a God. It's just because she has to feed her children. And I've always maintained, how can people worship and praise God if they are poor and hungry? They cannot. They would even probably be blaming God. My being part of this program, and I'd like to thank the Alliance for Science for giving me the venue to study this further. my being here is part of my Christian response to God's call to love my neighbor. I'm just one priest. Oh, I'd like to get you in on a secret. Eliza Van Court wanted to put some makeup on me. She wanted to train me for a long time, but I said no. I don't want to look like I'm being rehearsed. What I'm telling you is coming from my heart. I'm here because I believe that biotechnology, genetic engineering, would somehow improve the lives of my people. My farmers are hungry. And because I'm just a humble, simple priest, I'd like to contribute to the dialogue in my country, and perhaps in many other countries, to be able to change the perception of the church and their excellencies, the bishops, and their eminences, the cardinals, about how they view biotechnology. It's science, and God has allowed us to discover science to help the people. Next Sunday, if I'd like to educate you a little bit about Catholic liturgy, it would be the season of Advent. For the layman, it would be Christmas. And all the Gospels would be about the end time, how the end of the world will be, and how we will all be judged. And surprise, you know what? How God will judge us? It's not about how many times I prayed the rosary or forgot it, or how many times I went to church. No. In the Gospel of St. Luke, it will be this. When I was thirsty, did you give me a drink? When I was naked, did you give me clothes? When I was hungry, did you give me food? All of us will die, believe it or not. But when I die, I'd like to face God and look Him in the eye and say, I followed your commandment, I love my neighbor, and I put into action my faith. Thank you for being here. To my classmates, bon voyage tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Father Noli, for such a beautiful and touching story. And now we have our second speaker, and we're gonna lighten up the spirit in this room a little bit. Our second speaker is Jason Merkley. He has become a dear friend of mine, and he is a man with heart and as well as a man of principles. He came from, which in his words, the high desert of potato country in southeast Idaho. Jason graduated with BA and philosophy from Idaho State University before he earned his MBA with marketing emphasis. Jason, personally, he loves writing, 80s pop music, although sometimes he likes punk rock as well. And you're not gonna believe me, then he gonna lighten up this room with his tiny little bit jokes, but just trust me that he always stands to commit and be really serious in every action that he conducts. So, with lots of hearts, please welcome my dear friend, Jason Merkley.
Wow, thank you, Leah. Thanks for setting the bar so high for my expectations now. Let me immediately lower that bar for you all by telling a joke that's only half written. So, a priest, a scientist, and a vegan walk into a bar. There's not actually a punchline yet. This is something I'm still working on. But the lineup, the first three speakers, just is practically begging for that kind of a joke. As Leah mentioned, I'm a vegan. A vegan, for those who don't know, is somebody who avoids consuming animal products as much as possible. So things like meat, dairy, eggs. A lot of people think that I must be like stuck up or holier than thou, so they try to catch me with little technicalities. I had a friend come up to me and say, "Hey, Jason, you're a vegan, right?" I say, "Yeah." He says, "And vegans don't eat animals, right?" I say, "Yeah." He said, I saw you eating some animal crackers, though. I don't know. It's okay, I got him back. The next day I saw him. I said, hey, are you a cannibal? He says, no. I said, so you don't eat children? He's like, no. I said, I saw you eating some Girl Scout cookies. Girl Scout cookies are applicable for what I want to talk about tonight for a couple of reasons. First of all, a lot of them are vegan. Anybody like Thin Mints? Anybody else? All right, you guys are on the list to be recruited into veganism as soon as I'm finished here. The second reason is that Girl Scout cookies are made with GMO ingredients, and the Girl Scouts have been pretty unapologetic about it. A lot of vegans aren't into that. So if you know anything about vegans, you know that we're a bunch of liberal, tree-hugging, bleeding heart, anti-GMO activists. And that describes me pretty well, except for that very last part. Because as it turns out, I am a pro-GMO vegan. And I'll go ahead and repeat that while you recover from the shock of hearing it the first time. I'm a pro-GMO vegan. Being a pro-GMO vegan is sort of a lonely place to be. My friends in biotech think I must be some kind of spy from the organic industry, and my vegan friends think I'm some kind of shill. Yeah, sometimes I feel not very popular. I feel less popular than a plate of dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free brownies. But the truth is that my values that brought me to veganism in the first place are the same reason why I've become an advocate for biotechnology and GMOs. So I'd like to tell you a little bit more about those values. So let me take you back in time to my hometown in rural southeast Idaho, a town called Pocatello. I was a teenage kid sitting in a booth at McDonald's eating a hamburger. It's the last time I ever ate meat. I was sitting there thinking about the kind of person I wanted to be. And so I came up with a list of values. And I came up with 3 things. 1, an emphasis on kindness and compassion. 2 was disdain for the idea of the powerful exploiting the powerless. And, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. 3 is the importance of not imposing any unnecessary suffering. And I looked down at the burger I was eating, and that was a big aha moment for me. And I never ate meat again. That was back in 1998. So now let me fast forward you a few years to around 2012. I just moved from that small Idaho town to vegan paradise, which if you've been to Portland, Oregon, you know what I'm talking about. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just the lonely vegan guy in the small Idaho town. I was surrounded by a community of people who shared my values. And it was great. The vegans in Portland are awesome. One of the great things about vegans is they have this hypersensitivity about food and food politics. So naturally, GMOs are a really hot topic. My vegan friends hate GMOs. And when I moved to Portland, they immediately bombarded me with stories about all these scary, evil things going on with genetic modification. And I believed them. And I started hating GMOs too. I started looking for foods that had little organic, non-GMO labels because I thought that represented my values. I also happen to be one of those annoying guys on the internet who can't see anyone say something wrong without jumping into the conversation and correcting them. So One day, one of my friends had the nerve to post an article that was actually saying positive things about GMOs. Oh no, this cannot stand. We must correct this immediately. So I go on Google immediately to formulate my response. And I saw myself as this vegan James Bond, hunting for clues. And I was sure I was going to unravel this international conspiracy between scientists and industry. And I was going to pull out that linchpin, and the rocks would come tumbling, and all these industry shill cockroaches would come scurrying out all over the place, and I'd go stomp on them all. Then I thought as a vegan it'd be nicer if I just scooped them in a jar and put them out in the backyard where they wouldn't hurt anybody. But that's not what happened. As it turned out, I found out there's a lot of good things happening with GMOs. For example, GMOs have drastically reduced the amount of insecticides that farmers are using. They're helping us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from those agricultural operations. They're improving yields and quality of life for people in places like Bangladesh. And then that last part was like, whoa, there's GMO issues outside of the United States. Let me look into this some more. So I did not know that every year floods destroy enough rice to feed 30 million people. I did not know that blight and other diseases were ravaging crops across Africa. And I did not know that hundreds of thousands of children were going blind from preventable vitamin A deficiency and even dying in many cases every single year. Now, these are complicated problems, and there's not any single simple solution. But we have scientists who are doing a pretty good job of developing tools that we can use to start to address these problems. Unfortunately, a lot of these tools are sitting on a shelf in a laboratory somewhere gathering dust. Why? So this is where I had a second big aha moment, because I realized that it was because of me. Me and my friends, despite being good people with the best of intentions, were driving a wedge between these biotech tools and the people who desperately needed them. Me, as a white, middle-class male, born into about as much privilege as you can be born into, suddenly I realized, who am I to tell people across the world what they should or shouldn't be growing, what they should or shouldn't be eating? And when I made this realization, I felt shame. So that's why I'm here tonight. So I want to reach out to my friends in the vegan community, talk about kindness and compassion, disdain for the powerful exploiting the powerless, and preventing unnecessary suffering. I want to ask my vegan friends if the narrative they're promoting is in line with their values. I want to ask them and every other person who falls on the anti-GMO side of the fence to do a critical reevaluation of the facts, to challenge their assumptions. Our vegan movement was founded with science firmly embedded as a moral principle. Vegans back in the 1940s knew that our movement wouldn't survive if we didn't stick to scientific facts. As vegans, we need to take back our role as the vanguard of the environmental and social justice movement. And we do that by becoming champions for access to this technology for people who need it the most. Now, we all know that living a life of integrity is not always easy, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Right now, there's a lot of pressure on me from my friends in my community to stay quiet about this, to not do the kind of work that I'm doing now. And I've lost a lot of friends and close relationships. It would be very easy to throw in the towel and just toe the party line and tout the anti-GMO narrative. But I can't do that because I want to live in a world where we make decisions based on kindness and compassion and facts. I want to live in a world where we stand up for the powerless and the exploited and the suffering. And so that's why I'm here. I'm convinced that while GMOs are not a silver bullet, they're a desperately needed step in the right direction and a critical move towards social justice for humans and animals alike. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jason, for opening up our eyes with your perspective and your vision. And don't worry, you can face up the pressure. Let's have our third speaker, Nasib Mugwanya. Nasib is the outreach officer for Uganda Biosciences Information Center, a communication hub for National Agriculture Research Organization. He spent most of his time communicating science in a way that can benefit and empowers the public. For Nasib, his work is not just a job. And it's my pleasure to introduce him to all of you tonight. Please welcome Nasib Mugwanya.
Thank you, Leah, for your kind and sweet words. Before I stepped here, I had a reflection on what I'd prepared to say, but before I tell you my story, one of my high moments during the fellowship has been to meet with people with differing perspectives on this subject. And in one of the events that was arranged, I had the chance to talk to one of the folks on the other side of the debate. And we had a lot to talk about, but in one of his last statements, he said, "I hope you're not being trained to be a propagandist." I didn't even know what that word means. And when I looked it up, I laughed. So my story is not going to be a propagandist story. It's a story that happened and still happens even if I were not to come to Cornell. This is it. In my job, I hear hundreds of stories from fellow Ugandans struggling to feed their families as well as their communities. I wish more than anything that I could tell every one of their stories, but there are just too many to tell. So tonight, I'm going to tell you one story. It's a story of one woman. Her name is Jemima. She's a mother of 9 children. Yes, 9 children. And a farmer as well. She and her family struggle to get by every single day. This is her story. Cassava was always generous to Jemima. It has fed her family, the 9 children I told you about, and revenue from it has paid school fees for her children to receive an education. It has also fed families around her small village in Wakiso district in central Uganda. Unfortunately for Jemima, her family, and her community, things are starting to change. Cassava, a major crop in her life, is under threat by 2 major viruses. These viruses are devastating. They rot the edible part of the crop from inside, making it even unfit to feed to animals. Cassava is not only important to Jemima. In America, for all the time I've been here, I've not had a chance to eat cassava. But in Uganda, it's eaten by over 10 million Ugandans. And it's a major key food security crop. As someone who spends most of my time listening to farmer stories and what they are going through on their farms, it touches my heart when they bring up issues like viruses ravaging their gardens of crops that feed their families. So in my job at the National Agricultural Research Organization, our scientists, public sector scientists, are using all tools in the toolbox to address challenges like the viruses in cassava. Currently, one of the most promising solutions, I've told you we use a wide range of approaches. It's not a luxury of, trying to experiment with high-end advances in science. One of the most promising solutions to address the viral diseases in cassava has been through use of modern agricultural biotech tools, such as genetic engineering. Unfortunately, even though the solution is right in front of us, right within our reach, the legislative climate has not been conducive for farmers like Jemima and others across the country to have these crops on their farms. I'm appealing, this is my appeal, not to the American people, but to my Ugandan legislators and our esteemed government representatives present to help farmers like Jemima and others across Uganda to be given a chance to have access to virus-resistant cassava developed using tools of modern science such as genetic engineering. Most importantly, as an individual, I believe it's naturally fair just to give any farmer all over the world the chance to choose whatever could be there to address the problems they are facing. And genetically engineered cassava is one of those options that farmers who are struggling with these monstrous viruses can choose to grow and bring back life to their gardens. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nassif, for giving the voice for those who can't be heard. And I really want to appreciate and thank you to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, who still stay and listening to our stories. And right now, we have our final speaker, our final fellows that will share her stories. Joni Kamiya. Joni, you can clap. Sure. Joni hails all the way from Hawaiian island of Oahu. And Joni is also a daughter of a long-time Hawaiian papayas farmer. She's also a loving mom of 3. She's a wife and an occupational therapist. Joni, for us in the fellowship, she is the person that you can always come to when you need help or you need a hand. And for us, we really trust in Joni that we have our corners of advocacy and Joni's. And last but not least, thank you so much for all of you. And please welcome our last speaker, Joni Kamiya.
Thank you, Leah. I know the room's getting a little bit tired, so in Hawaii, we start with the word aloha. My story today starts off as a farm kid. I'm one of the 2% that is born a farm kid. Farming is in our blood. My grandfather came from Okinawa to Hawaii and started farming. My dad back there is a farmer, been farming majority of his life, and now my brother has become a farmer. I grew up on the farm. Well, our papaya farm in Hawaii is small, and the papaya ring spot virus was always present. And my dad would simply find a papaya on the tree with the virus, and he would take the machete to it and chop it down when we found the virus. And when we were a little kid, it was cool to see a big tree come crashing down. So we'd be like, wow. But over time, the ring spot virus really started to take its toll on the trees as a young child. Before we knew it, almost all the trees had to be chopped down. And my dad would call it a slow death, which meant a lot of his papaya trees were gone, and so was our income. As a result of it, we had to go back to work. Us kids went to work and to support the family. Well, fast forward a few years later, I went to the University of Hawaii, where my dad had some friends who were professors, and they told him, you know, Dad, Ken, we need somebody to work in the lab. And my dad said, yeah, my daughter there, she's at UH, she can work in the lab. So I said, okay. So I took the job working in the lab. In the lab, I learned that there was a technology, a simple inoculation that could save our papaya trees. And it gave me a good glimpse as to what this technology was about. With the technology, and the virus devastating our trees, my dad told me, no sense going into farming. You know, we don't know what's going to happen to it. So I decided to go into a different field. I went into occupational therapy. And I went to Washington University, got my degree, and went out to California, came back home at the urging of my husband, because I had my daughter there born that caused us to move back home. When I came home, I discovered a lot of misinformation was being said about my dad's farm and other farmers like ours. And me, born in the year of the tiger, I said, I can't let this dominate our family farm. It just bothered me. So I started commenting online. And I just kept commenting. Eventually, it turned into a blog. And when that happened, you know, I had to work under an alias just to protect our family reputation and our farm. And so I kept blogging under an alias. But thanks to Google, good old Google, I was outed. And they knew that I was you know, pro-GMO. And they thought I was speaking for big agriculture. In the Japanese culture, we have a saying, kodomo no tamini. It means for the sake of the children. It's ingrained in us to do what is best for the sake of our children. My dad also has it ingrained in him. And he accepted this technology to help keep his farm going so that we could have the farm. All I was just a farmer's daughter defending his farm. And thanks to the technology that has saved our farm, you know, my kids can now experience the farm on the weekend. The trees are green, the canopy's green, lots of fruit. We're very, very fortunate that my kids are living the childhood that I really loved. It's funny that my little thing on the internet, it was helping farmers in Hawaii, and hopefully it can help farmers around the world. My parents there, they call me the activist of the family because I'm so determined to speak out for our farm because I know that, you know, it could help others. My hope is that with all of you here tonight is to inspire you because you are the ones who can make change, to help small farmers like my dad around the world. And he's back there, helping me out to be here today with my mom, with the kids, so that our story can be known to help farmers around the world. And that's what I ask of everybody when you leave here tonight to do for us. Thank you.
You know, on the way here, I was talking to Leah, and she was reflecting on her time at the campus at Cornell and what they're about to do. And she said, I know it feels like the end, but really it's just the beginning. And I think that's quite a profound sentiment. And so I really hope that you will take the energy in the room today and take that forward over the next few months, over the next few years. As I said before, we have an enormous challenge before us at a macro and a micro level. But I feel that actually if we can somehow find a way to catalyze that and to expedite the stories that we've heard, the energy that we've been exposed to today, actually it'll be a much more optimistic time than it feels at the moment. So many thanks to the fellows actually for being here and giving us the excuse to come together tonight. And thank you, of course, to the staff from the Alliance for making the event possible. Thank you.